Hey guys, Stay Patient here, and today we've been playing some Alienation, a new game that's just been released today from the makers of Resogun and Dead Nation. Obviously that is Housemarque, and this game's been a lot of fun, but there's not a lot of information given to you with regards to how to level up your weapons and your character. So I thought we'd do a quick video explaining some of the things that we found out in the first few hours of our gameplay. So we're at the main screen here. I've turned the menu music off, so that's why it's so quiet, just so that you guys can hear me better. But at the main screen here, we've got all the tabs along the top there, and we're going to scroll across using R1 to the Upgrades tab. And here, if you use the trigger buttons, you can scroll through all these sort of tabs within this upgrade menu. So you've got Status, which covers our character's level and his current health and things like that. Then we've got Gear. Abilities is where we can upgrade or sort of buy skills for our character. And then resources is a rundown of the resources we have available. Now, that will sort of come into play in a moment. But if we... Oh, wrong button. Sorry, guys. If we scroll back to gear, let's have a look at how we go about upgrading and choosing our weapons. Now, you'll see that we have primary slots, secondary, heavy, and equipment slots. The equipment refers to things like grenades, boomerangs, which are very cool, mines, anything that's sort of a deployable item that will cause damage. Now, let's click on our secondary slot, because here we have an example of a couple of different rarities of weapons. Now, this game sort of structures the rarity of guns in a very similar way to many other games. Games like Destiny and The Division, and lots of the games that have this sort of looting available in them. There's a lot of looting in this game. It's very much a shooter-looter. And so as you can see, we've got a white weapon here, which is stock rarity. And then it goes up to green. It's a very familiar color scheme. Green is common, sorry. Blue is uncommon, purple is rare, and then I am not actually sure of what the next tier up is called. I'm guessing it's going to be orange in color, as many games are. And it may well be called legendary, but I haven't actually received any items of that rarity yet. But the main difference between the different rarities is the ability to upgrade your weapon. So you may have noticed at the bottom of the screen there, we have a little bit of a kind of upgrade tree, some circles linked by lines, and that's what we use to upgrade our weapon. Now the white gun here, the revolver, doesn't have anything there, so there's no way of upgrading this particular gun because it's of a stock rarity. But anything from blue upwards, so green items do not have a upgrade tree either, but blues, purples, and the top tier items, any of those all have the ability to be upgraded. Now, if you click on one of these guns, let's use this plasma shotgun as an example. You have three options. Equipping is self-explanatory, upgrade, and reroll stats. Now, let's cover the reroll stats first. Every time you break down a weapon, so I'm going to use this weapon as an example. We have a launcher here in our heavy weapon slot, which isn't as good as the other two weapons that we have. Now you'll notice that I have two level 9 guns here. One's purple and one's blue. Now the purple is much, much higher damage than the flamethrower, the blue weapon. So this one is around about 400 damage per second, whereas the minigun is 1400. Now, the reason for that isn't just the fact that it's of a higher rarity, but it's because we have some upgrades equipped into that weapon. So if you have a look at the circles along the bottom of the screen there on the minigun, you can see they're all filled in with things that the game calls cores. And we'll explain that a little bit more in a second. But there are no upgrades on the flamethrower, and that's why the flamethrower is so inferior when compared to the minigun. Now, the green launcher here isn't worth keeping. It's actually a higher damage per second than the flamethrower. So you may think to yourself, oh look, that does more damage than the flamethrower, it's a better weapon. But you have to factor in the fact that this weapon, because it's green, it does not have an upgrade tree. So as soon as we start putting some upgrades into the flamethrower, it's going to overtake the launcher and be a much more powerful weapon. So you have to sort of take that into account when you're comparing guns. And the great thing is, when you do upgrade one of these weapons, the upgrades you have equipped on it are factored into the damage per second. So that is, of course, why the minigun has 1400 damage per second, because we have some upgrades on it that increase the damage and increase the fire rate and all those different things, increase the clip size. So that is reflected in those damage numbers, so it's much easier for you to compare things. But another useful thing is that when you're out in the world, when you're playing the game and you find a piece of loot, it will give you green or red arrows depending on whether it's better than or worse than your currently equipped item in that slot. Now, if it's better than what you're currently using, you have the option to equip it instantly on the spot, just simply by holding the X button down rather than tapping it to pick it up. Now, the great thing is, as far as I can tell, when you find an item and you're looking at it, you haven't picked it up yet, but it's on the ground, it will give you green arrows, even if that weapon isn't currently stronger than what you're using, because it compares the weapon on the ground with the base stats for your current weapon that is equipped. So let's say we found a heavy weapon that had 1,300 damage per second, and obviously it wasn't upgraded because it's a gun that we find out in the world. There's no upgrades on the guns that you find. You have to install them yourself. So let's say we find a gun that's 1,300 damage per second. Now, if we were to remove all of these upgrades on this minigun, it would drop the damage down well below 1,300. So that gun we find out in the world would have green arrows on it. Even though it's technically lower damage than the gun we're currently using, the only reason the gun we're using is higher damage is because of those upgrades. So those arrows, those kind of indicators as to whether those new weapons are better or worse than what you're currently using, they are based on the standard stats for the weapon. They don't take into account the upgrades. Now, that's a lot easier than some games. I've noticed on the Division, if you're wanting to buy a weapon, the weapons that you already have equipped have all of your personal stats, things like your firearm stat and the mods that you've equipped on the gun. All of that is factored in, and the damage numbers you have on the weapon that you're currently using are much higher than the base figure. But when you go to a shop, there's no way of knowing whether that gun is better than or worse than what you're currently using, because you can only compare it to the gun you have equipped with all of its upgrades installed. Whereas this game allows you to see, it allows you to compare guns side by side as the base version of the gun. That way you know that if you take all these upgrades off this minigun and put them on the new weapon, that new weapon is going to be stronger. I hope that makes sense. I'm sorry I kind of rambled on a bit trying to explain that. It's a bit of a difficult thing to explain until you play the game, but it's a really good system that I think they've put a lot of thought into to make the sort of, I guess, the UI of the game a lot more user-friendly. Anyway, so we are here. Let's just get back to where we before we started going off on that tangent. My bad, guys. We've got this launcher which we are going to scrap. Now, along the bottom of the screen, you'll see the square button salvages the weapon. Now, if you press that, it will tell us what we are going to receive. So we're going to receive whatever those items are. They're basically items that you use to re-roll other weapons. And re-rolling weapons uses all different types of these items that you get for scrapping weapons. Now, just as a point of notice here, one thing to take into account is that if you go to scrap a gun that has upgrades installed, you will receive those cores. Now, that's what the game calls the upgrade kind of orbs that you use. They're called cores. You will receive them back. So as you can see there, if we scrap this minigun, pardon me, we would receive 11 of each of those two re-rolling kind of materials. But we'd also receive all 5 of those cores that we currently have socketed into that weapon back. So you don't lose them. That's really good to know. It's very important to know, because that's actually the only way of removing cores. And we'll explain a little bit more about that when we look at the upgrade tree and how to sort of manipulate it or use it. But we're going to come back. We're not going to scrap that weapon. We are going to scrap the launcher, and that's going to give us some materials that we can use. Now, if we scroll across again, you'll notice along the top here, if you go to resources, you'll be able to see how many cores you have. Now, you can also see the reroll materials here. But the cores you have are split up into 4 types. So when you see different colors of cores, that's not related to the rarity of the core. It's related to what type of core it is. So you have power, boost, utility, and prismatic. And each of those 4 types will have a different effect depending on which gun or which piece of equipment you're socketing them into. Now, one thing you can do is, if you look along here, you'll see the 6 columns. So we've got power, boost, utility, and prismatic, and we've got 6 columns of each. Now, these basically go up in power. So if we take a look, does it give us the... on the right-hand side there, you'll see that these are the power core level 1, and then you've got power core level 2, and then it goes up to level 3, 4, 5, and 6. And 6 is the top level. Now, a very useful thing to be able to do is that you can combine 3 cores together to create 1 core of the next level up. So if we combine 3 of these level 1 power cores, you'll notice we've got 6 at the moment. Combine 3, and that adds 1 to our total of the level 2. But now we've got 4 available on level 2, and we might think, well, we need lots of power cores. Or we might think, well, let's get 1 of a higher level. So we can combine 3 of those, and we can combine another 3 of the lower level. Now, rather than having lots of sort of low-level ones that aren't going to have a huge effect on our weapons, we have 2 level 2 ones and 1 level 1 one. 1 level 1 one. Okay, so with that screen sort of covered, we're going to go back to our gear, and we're going to show you our upgrade tree, because there's some very important pointers to take into account when you're upgrading your weapons. So we've got our energy gun here, and I believe the current class that we're using, which is the tank, only seems to have 1 primary. I haven't actually come across any guns that aren't referred to as energy guns. So that seems to be like the go-to primary for this particular class. And then the secondary and the heavy are where you sort of have a bit more choice. Pardon me, guys. So if we click on this and we click on reroll, you'll notice that you can reroll either the damage, the fire rate, the clip size, critical chance, and also the socket types. Now, for that to be explained, I'm going to actually go first into the upgrade menu. So if we go to upgrade the gun, you'll see a closer image of the upgrade tree that we could see from the kind of main overview of the weapon. Now, you'll notice that these are all different colors. Now, these 2 here do not have a color, even though there are cores socketed into these slots. We can let's socket a blue one in and see how it compares to the other blue ones. Okay, so you can see a distinct difference between this blue one, which is just like a bland socket, and these blue ones, which have like a blue outline. Now, if I swap the blue core that is in this slot for a different color one, you'll notice that the socket, or the slot it's referred to as, the slot is still blue, but the core within it is red. So the key thing about this is that some of these slots have colors hinting at the kind of core they want you to socket into that slot. Now, you'll notice here that this blue slot has a blue core within it. Now, the blue ones refer to fire rate. So you'll see that the core is giving us a fire rate bonus of plus 16%, but the slot is also giving us a fire rate bonus. Because we've used the correct color and that color is matching the slot, it gives us sort of 50% extra bonus on top of the basic bonus we're getting from the core itself. Now, again, if we were to put a red one in, we would get damage bonus plus 8%, which is what the core is giving us. But the slot is not giving us any bonus because we're sort of using the incorrect color. Now, if we were to put blue ones into both of these slots here, you'll notice that there's like a line linking them. You'll see a dotted line between the two. Now you'll notice that we have the 16% fire rate bonus from the core itself. We have the 8% fire rate bonus from the slot being the correct color. And we have synergy, which is an extra 8% fire rate bonus, and that is because we have two blue slots next to each other, and we have blue cores in both of them. So they are like linking together to boost the bonus that you're receiving. So the bottom line is that you want to make sure that you're socketing, for instance, red cores into red slots, yellow cores into yellow slots, and blue cores into blue slots. Now, I'm sorry, you've probably just received a black mark on the screen. That was because I had a notification that my battery is running low on the controller, but hopefully it's disappeared now. So in these slots, they do not have colors related to them. So you can put whatever, whatever cores you want in there, whichever bonuses you fancy having on the weapon. So another thing just to take note of here is if we go into the assign core, you'll see that the grid here is very much like the grid that we had on the resources page. And you can do the same thing here. You can actually press the triangle button. Even though at the bottom of the screen it says reroll stats is triangle, because we've got this assign core window open, you'll notice quite faintly along the bottom of this window, it says assign, combine, or back. So we can combine 3 of these blue ones together to create a level 2 one, combine another 3, and then we can combine these together to get a level 3 one. And we've got 2 level 3 blue cores there now. Now, just to show you, on this, you'll notice that the blue ones on here are giving extra fire rate. The yellow ones are clip size, etc. Now, if we were to go to our equipment, because it's totally different, there is no fire rate related to equipment. Those cores have different effects. So we've got the yellow ones here are replenish rate. The blue ones are radius, and the red ones are still damage. Now, they still have a roughly similar kind of effect. So things like the replenish rate is sort of linked with the idea of, let's have a look, just remind myself. The yellow ones, yes, they are clip size. So replenish rate and clip size are both related to how often, I guess, you can fire the gun or the piece of equipment. And the red one is always power. The red ones are referred to power cores. So they always relate to damage or something along those lines. And with the blue ones, radius as opposed to fire rate. They've got like a similar kind of effect, but obviously it's different depending on what you are socketing it into. So there we have it, guys. There was something else I was going to mention, which I'm completely forgetting at the moment. But let's have a look here. So we've covered upgrading our weapons. Yes, of course, re-rolling stats. Now we've covered this a small amount. But let's have a look here and go into it a little bit deeper. So each weapon, because obviously weapons are tied to a certain level, so this energy gun is level 7 and it's rare, there is kind of a minimum and maximum value it can have in each of these stats. So for instance, this gun, I've actually rolled quite a good roll on this gun when it comes to damage, because it can be anywhere between 51.8 HP and 66.6 HP. And we've rolled it at 65.4, which is almost as much as it can be. Now I'm going to check something now, which I'm not completely sure on. We have 65.4 HP damage. Now, if we remove the red, pardon me, if we remove this red core, I just want to check and see. Yes, okay, so when we remove the red core, which was increasing the damage of the gun, the minimum and maximum goes down, but we still have the same percentage of, as you can see there, the bar hasn't moved. but the damage itself has gone down because we've removed that core. So it does have an effect on the re-rolling page here. So let's pop our red core back in. In fact, we're going to put a higher level red core one in for now. So back to the re-roll stats page. So if I wanted to, I could spend some of these resources I have. I have 14 at the moment, and I could re-roll the damage. But the thing is, the damage is quite high already. You know, we're not going to get much higher than that. And it's always going to be, if I re-roll it, it's always going to be between 52.7 and 67.8. And we're almost at the maximum it can be. But some of these other ones are quite low. So the critical chance, for instance, between 5.8% and 8.3, we are literally as low as it can be within that range. So we could spend some resources or some materials to re-roll that one specific stat. And pardon me, that's the great thing, is that you don't have to re-roll the entire weapon and risk losing some of those high-end stats that you do have. You can just re-roll the stats that you do want to improve on. So if I was to re-roll this one, in fact, I will do that now because this is my go-to gun at the moment, and just for the sake of showing you guys how it works. So the critical chance at the moment is 5.8%. So we've re-rolled that, and we've actually come off very, very well indeed. We have 8.1%. Now, if we were to socket some more of the prismatic cores, which improve the critical chance, if we had more of those sockets in this weapon, then that would improve that even more. But of course, the minimum and the maximum would go up. Our percentage of that bar would stay the same, but the actual value itself would rise. Now, that explains all these four. But the interesting thing as well is that you can re-roll the socket types. So let's say we're looking at the gun, and of course I've got blue cores in the blue slots, red cores in the red slots, etc. But I might think to myself, right, I don't really want blue cores. I believe the blue cores is the fire rate. So I might think, well, I don't want a faster fire rate. It just means I have to reload more often. I want more damage. So if we were to re-roll the socket types, that would shift those slots around, and we may end up with 3 red ones and 2 yellow ones, or whatever the case may be. It's completely randomized. But that's one way that you can take a weapon you enjoy using. Maybe you get a rare weapon, or maybe legendary, or whatever it's called, and it's a gun that's really nice to use. It's got some of its stats are really nice and high. And you might think to yourself, well, it's a great gun, but I want to be able to put different cores into it. And rather than putting the cores you want into the gun, but sort of mismatching them with the colors so that they're not getting that extra bonus, you can just re-roll the socket types and keep doing that until you receive the socket types that you do want to go with. So, you can match those colors up and get those extra bonuses, but also have what you want to have on the gun. I hope that makes sense, guys. It's difficult to kind of explain without really playing the game, but I do have a Let's Play up on YouTube, several hours of gameplay on the game. So go and check that out if you want to see, if it's the kind of game that you want to play, if it looks good. I talk a lot with, we've got quite a few viewers in there on Twitch that have asking questions about how good it is and what it compares to and things like that. But that sort of covers the gear customization. Obviously, I would mention that I probably wouldn't go sort of re-rolling too much stuff and sort of, spending all your resources too soon in the game, because you do level up very quickly. So if you've got a level 7 gun that you really love and you keep re-rolling it, you're going to use all your resources, and then you're going to realize that that gun is useless to you because you've reached level 8, 9, 10, and you've left that gun behind. You've picked up much better weapons, and you've sort of wasted all those resources. The final thing, just to cover briefly, is the abilities screen. Now, every time you level up, you either get an active abilities skill point or a passive abilities skill point, and I believe it sort of alternates between the two. Every time I level up, I get 1 point for one of these two, and you can see on the right there it says unused points, and it's got 2 of them. One is for the active abilities, one is for passive. So active abilities are your 3 kind of skills that you have to activate yourself. For this character, we've got Tesla Charge, Shield, and Ground Smash. Now, the passive abilities are things that just happen without you having to actually sort of trigger them. So, for instance, we've got a skill here where if we go down below 25% health, then we get health regen, and it regens us back up to 25%. Now, the thing to mention here, this is pretty self-explanatory. It's all just a case of choosing what you want. Now, if I was to want to, if I was going to pick the second level of this shield skill, then I would need to first pick an upgrade from this section here. So you need to spend a point to buy an upgrade between these skills, if that makes sense, where those plus signs are. So first of all, you buy the skill itself, then you upgrade it with one of these two, and then that gives you access to level 2 of the skill, and so on and so forth. Now, when you buy one of these upgrades, you'll notice that one of them is yellow, and that sort of indicates which one you've bought. But when you buy it, you literally just buy it once. You don't have to choose straight away which one it is, because once you bought it, you then get the option to switch between one or the other at will. And you can change that as much as you want. So there's no sort of tying yourself into certain upgrades. You can change them depending on your playstyle. And that's how Housemarque have designed the game in such a way that you can sort of change your upgrades depending on who you're playing with and what classes you have in your team, maybe what mission you're doing, etc. So here, for instance, we've got the Tesla charge, which is sort of when it's recharged, you have to pick up orbs, sort of recharge orbs, for them to recharge that skill and then for it to become usable again. So it doesn't have like a ongoing cooldown. You have to actually pick up recharge orbs, which randomly drop from enemies. But when it's usable, you trigger it, and then you have 2 shots of like a super powerful beam that just pierces through multiple enemies. So the upgrades here, we have the option between Tesla damage, which increases the damage dealt, and Tesla width, which increases the width of that laser beam that you shoot out. So that gives you a rough idea. They're not like super interesting upgrades, but it's just a way that you can tailor the skills to your playstyle depending on how you want to play. So there you have it, guys. I hope that's explained everything. Just remember that you can upgrade weapons that are blue rarity or higher. You can combine those cores together to be able to create higher level cores. Higher level cores. And also you want to try and socket the correct colors into the correct slots. Just one last thing to mention, if I haven't already, I think this was self-explanatory because you would have seen me doing this, but when you socket these cores into the slots, they aren't permanently there. As we mentioned earlier, you can scrap the weapon and receive all the cores that were socketed back. But also you can just switch and change between them as much as you want. So there's no permanent choices being made. I was worried about upgrading my guns to begin with because I didn't want to lose the cores, but then when I realized that you don't lose them, you'll always get them back no matter what, I figured that it's worth upgrading everything you come across that you're going to be using. So there you have it, guys. I hope that's made sense. I am going to go now because I end up rambling on otherwise. I hope you enjoy the game if you've bought it. For now, I'm Stay Patient. Go and check out the rest of my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all soon.